this is Caran, and I have a new art supply I want to try out with you today. This is the NeoArt 6901 by Caran, and I was kind of curious about these because I already have the Neopastel, the Neocolor Is, and the Neocolor IIs, all of which I like for their various purposes, and I just wasn't sure how these were different. So I bought a little handful of colors here. I picked colors that kind of filled some gaps or replaced some of my oil pastels that I was running low on, thinking that they would be similar to those. They are marketed as a wax oil pastel and really are advertised, I guess, for their Lightfast rating. And so here I am trying them out, and very first stroke I can see that they are not at all like the oil pastels, the Neopastels that I, had thought would be similar. For one, they are an octagon shape instead of round, which is nice because they don't roll around. I have a sloped drafting table. They don't roll around like the other Neo Pastels and Neocolors do. Also, they are, as I use them, I can see that they are very stiff or dry, very unlike the oil pastels, and seem a little bit more like the Neocolor crayons. And I'm just checking them out here, checking the colors. I'm trying layering the white on top. See how that works. It does layer a little bit. They do blend pretty nicely, so that's nice. That's what I'm checking here. I'm using that white to check how well they blend. The colors I got were olive brown at 50%, a black, dark indigo, which is one of my favorite of the Luminance colored pencil colors, cornelian, I'm not sure how you say that, saffron, which is another of my favorite colors, and white. So I am trying them with some water here to see what it does. Now my water was slightly dirty, so that dinginess is more about that than about actually smearing the colors. And so now I'm comparing to the oil pastel, which you can see how buttery smooth and the coverage of those is much more solid. There's less texture, I guess, showing as I color. And if you've used Neopastel, you know just how smooth and creamy they are. And one of my favorite oil pastels because they're not like too soft nor too hard. They're just that right middle ground. I tried layering them over the NeoArt pastels, and it of course layers very nicely, which is one of the things that I do like about oil pastels. What I don't like about oil pastels is that they stay like they don't set up, so they stay kind of sticky and tacky and will smudge. And so I use them on my artwork, but I'm kind of sparing because of that. And so now the colors I just tried were the Neocolor Is, and now I'm grabbing those Neocolor IIs to give them a test too. So I feel like the Neocolor II are slightly softer than the Neocolor I, and just have a little bit smoother coverage. And of course the Neocolor II are water soluble. So I'm going to do a water test here with the Neocolor II, and you can see how they just totally will wash out, and which is really nice when that's what you want them to do. The Neocolor Is, however, do not dilute with water, or not water soluble. So I often use the Neocolor I as an alternative to the oil pastels in adding little final touches to artwork because they don't smudge as readily as the oil pastels do. I also don't use the Neocolor IIs for my final touches on a piece because if I choose to put a finish on it, then obviously the finish will just activate the pastels, and they will, the colors will smear. Now I'm just grabbing those NeoArts again and kind of layering on top of that wash that I made with the Neocolor IIs, just kind of seeing how things layer. Since I am a mixed media artist, I care most about how it acts with other medium, and so that's kind of what I'm testing out here, in addition to the properties that it has on its own. So just layering in some color here, getting a feel for them. And I would say of the 3 existing Caran pastel type, the Neopastel, the Neocolor I and II, these appear to be most like the Neocolor ones. I'm working here in a Strathmore Mixed Media sketchbook, which has a kind of absorbent paper. The paper has a little bit of tooth to it. It's one of my favorite sketchbooks because it really just takes any medium well. But because of that slight bit of texture on the page, you get a textured effect as you lay these down. So I'm just going back and seeing how well I can really darken those up if I choose to have a more solid appearance, and with a little effort you can get them pretty solid even on this little bit rougher paper. I'm kind of zeroing in, comparing them with the Neocolor I, which, since that's what they seem most similar to, so I grabbed a Neocolor I crayon that I'm just kind of adding some black outlines or marks here. I really have no image that I'm trying to make. I'm just kind of testing them out, and so now I switched to the NeoArt just to see, and honestly I can't tell a whole lot of difference in how these go down, how they feel, and seem quite similar. How they feel in your hand is a little different because of these are a little fatter, like more the size of an oil pastel, and they have that, of course, octagon shape, which makes them pretty comfortable in the hand, where the Neocolor I are thinner and longer, more, I guess, have a slight bit more of a point to them because of that. As I start layering them with the black over the oil pastel, the Neopastels, it does seem to layer pretty well on top of that, which is pretty impressive. And then I'm going back over those first swatches I did, and where I had mixed with the white, and as you can see, I can just totally get a pretty opaque coverage on top of the previous layers. So this would be the 3rd layer that I'm putting down, and it does seem to have a really good coverage. So by now I can see that I was totally wrong in thinking that these were like oil pastels, and I was adding colors to my oil pastel selection. And these are actually much more like the Neocolor I, which I do use those two kind of similarly, but it does kind of change how I'm feeling about these. I'm actually thinking I am much more likely to use these more because I seldom use oil pastel, even though I love them. I seldom use them in a sketchbook because I don't like to deal with the smudging. I'm pretty reserved with them in artwork because I know that they will stay tacky and sticky. I have to use them in small amounts to be able to varnish on top of them or work on top of them. So this has just opened up a whole new realm of possibilities for me, because now I'm thinking of all the things that I could do with these, and am starting to get much more excited about them. They have a excellent Lightfast rating, which is hence the 6901 tacked on to the NeoArt name, which is a standard for measuring Lightfastness. And so Lightfastness with this qualification guarantees exceptional Lightfastness for up to 100 years, which makes these much more appropriate to use in artwork. I don't worry so much about that in my sketchbooks, but in artwork that I'm selling, I do try to consider that. So that is good news. These are actually Lightfastness similar to, or the same as, I guess, the Luminance colored pencil line by Caran. And in fact, the 40 colors that these, or 48 colors that these currently come in, match, or at least I think the majority of them match the Luminance colored pencils, so, which is also pretty neat. And if you just consider the pigment value in these, they have about double the amount in one of these sticks as there is in a pencil, but yet they cost less. So considering all that, these are a good value. If I wanted to say color in a large area, I would use these instead of my Luminance pencils, not only for ease and efficiency, but also just considering the cost. I'm doing a little smudge test now with my fingers. You can see those oil pastels smudge the most. These smudge a little bit, but much less, and so I'm happy to see that. Now that I've done that little exploration, I have a better idea of what I really want to check out in these. So I'm going to paint some, I'm taping this off into a grid, and I'm going to use this fluorescent matte acrylic paint that is my own mix of color that I often use for underpainting for my artwork. And so I'm just going ahead and making a grid of those to make some little tests with the NeoArt pastels and see how they would work, in a art piece. So this is matte acrylic paint on top of Strathmore mixed media sketchbook paper, and once it's dry, I'm just taking those NeoArt pastels and just starting to play with them. I'm not giving a lot of thought to what it is I'm drawing. I'm just kind of testing out these pastels and see how they work on paint. I really like the texture that I can get on top of the paint, and I am wishing that I had more colors. This color palette's a little bit difficult to create anything with, as I'm pretty limited. I have a couple oranges, a green, a navy, and a black, or an indigo and a black, which I can really hardly tell apart, and a white. So that's my limitations for doing this little test here, but yeah, it is sufficient for me to see that these layer very nicely. They cover over the paint. I really like the feel of how they work over this matte acrylic paint, which is what I often use. And so far so good. Next, I decided to try a little house here, and still kind of a similar landscape scheme, but maybe just using the colors a little bit differently. And one thing I really want to explore a little bit more is how that white looks, especially on top of this underpainting color. And so I'm coloring that house with that white. Really kind of like how it covers. I think it really shines when I'm using it in a little bit bigger areas, like this sky area on this one, and I really love the texture that gives. I would feel much freer using these in a bigger area on my finished art pieces because of the Lightfast rating, so I am excited about the possibilities that gives. The next thing I'm trying here is a still life and an abstract, just to see, kind of give it a fair shot. And so now I'm turning the page, closing the page, really applying some pressure to that facing page, and because I want to see how it behaves in a sketchbook with transfer. And there's a few little crummy specks there, but overall so much less smudging than you would have with an oil pastel. Now for my favorite, peeling that washi tape off. This washi tape is some I have in my Etsy shop. It's my own design from some citrus hull pattern. and it's available there. I like to use it in sketchbooks as well to just kind of tape off areas when I'm making like a little grid panel like this, which is one of my favorite things to do on these, especially on these larger sketchbooks. Going back and adding a little more layering, one thing I noticed is that these do pick up color. Like if you use this on top of the black or the indigo, then it has picked up some color on it. So if you don't want that to transfer, then you probably need to clean off the tips of these before you go on to something else. I kind of don't mind that. I feel like that just kind of helps everything get incorporated together, but that is something to be aware of. I really enjoyed working on top of the paint, so I am going back to this original messy swatch page and going to cover it up with paint, see how paint works on top of it, if it's how much of a resist it makes. So you can definitely see that showing through, but also the paint was able to go over the top. Now if I was using watercolor or something like that, it'd probably be a different story. But this matte acrylic does reasonably cover with some of it showing through, which again is not something that I mind when I'm making art. I like those previous layers to still be a little bit evident, but be able to also work on top of them. I'm also drawing with a heat gun just to see how those pastels hold up to heat underneath. Sometimes things when heated will kind of rise to the top then, and it doesn't seem to be the case with this. So the next thing I want to try is going over it again with some more NeoArt pastels and see what those do. And as you can see, it works just very nicely on top of that painted surface, and you get a very nice coverage. I do have a little bit of smearing, I guess, happening here, but I think it was because I still had some remnants of that black on my white pastel. So at this point, I think, oh, maybe I just want to go ahead and make this into something. So I decided to stop there and do some drawing in. So I went and grabbed my Luminance pencils, or a few of them. I didn't, as I said, these colors match the Luminance colored pencil colors. I just got something similar. I didn't try to specifically match them. But I'm testing now to see how they work on top of the NeoArt. They layer nicely. It's just like layering over itself. So that makes me wonder whether this, the NeoArt, these sticks, these pastels, are actually more like a colored pencil, like the Luminance pencil lead in a stick form. So that again gets kind of my wheels turning and thinking about that. So I am drawing in with my Luminance pencil, which also works very nicely on top of the matte acrylic paint. And so detail work can be done with the colored pencils, while these new NeoArt wax oil pastels can be used for coloring in bigger areas. Back to the NeoArt pastels, trying to see what I can do to just kind of real quickly create some textured bark type feeling here. Very easy to get textures with these, and I do really love that. I think these are going to be so fun to use in so many ways. As I create artwork, I very simply can get the feel of bark here. I get so many texture possibilities. Now I'm just checking to see how easy it is to scratch into, and like if I can expose the layers underneath. I have a mechanical pencil but without the lead, and I'm just using it to kind of scrape in there. It does scratch a little bit, like it will come off a little bit with scratching with a sharp tool like this. And that's just something to be aware of, especially again, if you have large areas of it in a finished piece. It made me realize I may want to add some protection to it. But it's also nice to be able to expose a little bit of what's underneath, just kind of scratch into it and get those layers exposed. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It's both a pro and a con, I guess. So that brings me to trying some fluid matte medium to cover, to be a coating, which I normally would not do in a sketchbook, but I would do this on a piece of art. So I'm going to see how it reacts with that, whether it smears or smudges as I coat this on, and how durable that coating seems to be once I have it coated. So just going to put a thin layer over the whole thing of this matte medium with a paintbrush here, and let that dry, and we'll go from there. So I did not notice any smearing or smudging as I coated that, which is good news, and that gives me a very nice finish over. So that finishes up that piece. And my experimenting for today, all in all, I'm pretty sold on these, and I think I will be expanding my collection. So thanks for watching. If you've tried these, tell me what you think, and I'll see you next time.